see here. That one. Morning, everybody. Let's go with that one. All right. In this video, we'll talk about assemble your team. So, as a small business owner, often referred to as, you have your own ship. Your truck is your own ship. You're the captain of your own ship, which is great. There's no doubt about that. But you know, very often you're going to need a support network of people to make that possible. So let me give you an example. I'm not talking about family support and anything like that. I'm talking about things like you need to have mail services. A place like a UPS store, for example, that will receive your mail and your packages and things like that. We often talked about having a registered agent. If you're an LLC, this will be someone who can receive legal documents in your name. That they will sign that they received these legal documents. So there's two examples right there. I would also say that part of this support network would include your professional services, such as a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, the dentist, your primary care physician, these types of things. People that are part of the community or other small businesses in the community that you rely on to make your business more successful. And what's great about building your team is you're the team leader, you're the captain. So you're paying for all this stuff, right? Because now you're no longer an employee. You are an independent contractor, 1099, or an owner operator, and you're paying for all your medical. You're paying for your dental. You have insurance, but you're paying for that insurance. So everything that use as a support network, you're paying for it. So you are a customer to them, and the customer is always right. So this is the thing where you're going to have to really take the bull by the horns, or take the, for example, and say, look, I'm in charge of all these things. It's like these people are here to help me. I'm not here to help them. It's not that you're going to follow their instructions. I mean, your doctor may tell you what to do, and it's up to you whether or not you want to do that. A lot of times it's like, well, I'll take that under advisement, and then I'll go to research it some more. But here's the thing: with all these people are part of your team. You get to decide whether they stay on the team, because this is your team. This is where you're building your support base, and you're adding pieces to your team. And if you got a doctor you don't like, then guess what? You fire that doctor and you go get yourself another doctor. You got a dentist you don't like, you fire that dentist, you go find another dentist. You get crappy mail service, you fire that small business and you go get another one. UPS, I had them for several years, and they were doing great until they changed the store manager, and the new manager came with a policy that they're only going to hold your mail for 7 days, and then after that they're going to return it. Well, that doesn't necessarily work for me as a national over-the-road truck driver, because I might be broke down. I might have ordered something off of Amazon, and then the next day I broke down, and now I'm at Freightliner for 7 days. Well, guess what? The store manager is going to return that package. Then I don't get a refund. The thing that I bought. I might have spent $100 for that item, and that's like, well, where'd it go? We returned it. You returned it to the Amazon warehouse. And then where's my money? Because I didn't get a refund after it was returned, so I fired them. And then I found found local mail services that do packages and things like that. And the lady is great. She's like, we'll hold your mail as long as you want it. You want to hold us to hold it for 30 days, we'll hold it for 30 days. And it costs less. And a more cheerful, helpful attitude. So I was like, this is great. So I fired the UPS store and I went with this other small business that's that really suited for what I needed, and they have several truck drivers for that reason that use their services. So this is what I mean about assemble your team is that you're going to add little pieces, to your support network. It's like, okay, this works, this doesn't work. And so you'll replace the ones that don't work with ones that do. I have a storage unit, doing great, and I often think about changing storage units. Well, then the business built an addition and they had larger storage units available. And I was in line, I worked with the local manager there, and they put me in as their best customer. They gave me any choice of storage unit I wanted. And so I went and got the 10 by 20 climate controlled storage unit. And there weren't that many available. And I was front in line. I got to choose which one I wanted. That's great customer service. I was like, yes, that builds loyalty. So that's exactly what I wanted. That's exactly what I needed. And that's exactly what I expect, because I'm paying for all this stuff. So if you get crappy service, you're the boss. You know, you don't necessarily want to be rude. You just quietly end that service and go find another service. Here's the thing: even though I know I'm the boss because I'm the customer, I'm the one paying. I still mind my manners. I still are very polite to people. And in Texas, where I'm at, if you want to get along with people, you say ma'am and sir all day long. People like that. So you know even though you're the boss, you still gotta mind your manners because people aren't going to tolerate, someone that's over the top, for example. So yeah, I say yes sir and yes ma'am all day long, but I know that I rely on these people, and these people are providing me a level of service that I appreciate. So there are other examples of assemble your team. I have a network of owner operators that I've dealt with very closely over the years on Facebook. And whenever I have questions or they have questions, we're able to communicate in a Facebook group, and we're able to help each other out. We share breakdown histories and warranty issues and costs and all kinds of ideas, that we go back and forth on. They're part of my team, so uh, I'm very choosy about who I spend my time with, as far as this team, because you can have very disruptive team members, for example, and you're going to have to decide, you're the team leader, do you want to cut them from the team, and sometimes you have to, it's because you're running a business, it's just, this is costing you money every single day, so if you got a bad team member, then you give them an opportunity to get aligned with your values, or you end up letting them go, and you're just building a solid foundation for your small business. It's really what it comes down to. So but the idea here is that when it comes to who's in charge or who's the boss, who's the team leader, who's the captain of this team, that is you. That is you. You're no longer an employee that does what they're told. Oftentimes companies tell you what to do, and then maybe your spouse tells you what to do, your parents tell you what to do, and you know doctors tell you what to do, and you're being told what to do all day long. Well, as a small business owner, this whole script flips. Now you're telling people what to do, you know, and they better do it. And if they don't do it, don't be rude about it, but just go replace them. It's like, well, you know, that's not going to work for me. So I will find a doctor with a second opinion, or a doctor that is more in line with my way of thinking. I have a primary care physician who's outstanding, and it's really been great because we think alike, and I can say, well, what do you think about this? And they're like, yeah, I agree with your thinking. Then it's like, oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. Then I have other doctors that I've seen over the years, and they're like, doom and gloom. It's like, do this or else. And I'm like, I don't think so. I'll review that with my primary care physician, who I trust, and then we'll come up with a different plan. So, and I've had dentists that just they just go wild. They want to bill your insurance company for everything. It's like, I came in here for a teeth cleaning, not an overhaul. So these are the types of things that you need to pay attention to, and start identifying, what it is you need from the community, what it is you want. It's like, do you need a place to park your personal vehicle? Okay, well, there's businesses that do that. Do you have a favorite Uber driver, for example? Maybe you save that person's contact information, and whenever you need an Uber ride, that's the guy you go to. Who's the local mechanic or dealership that's going to work on your personal vehicle? Like I have a Silverado, so I take my pickup truck, into the Chevy dealer, and believe me, they take good care of me. They make sure my truck is maintained just like my Freightliner is maintained, and I expect that. And if I didn't get that, I wouldn't go to them. I'd go to somewhere else. Um, so you just go on down the list. You could probably, if you really thought about it, you could probably name 10 or 12 different businesses or services that you need to have from your local community, and say, all right, this is my team. This is who I used. When I have this type of thing going on, this is who I'm going to call. This is who I'm going to hire. And if they don't do what I want, then I will be polite about it, but I will replace them with somebody who does. It's often the thing that, like, you either do what I ask, or I'll find someone who can and will. So that's the thing, and that holds true with us as professional truck drivers. When we have a load to be delivered on time. So of course, and if you can't deliver it on time, they want to be notified ahead of time that you're going to be running late. And then when you get there, you know they don't want to deal with your attitude. They expect a certain level of cooperation and service for them as well. So I take all those skills I learned from dealing with customers when picking up and delivering freight, and I applied the same principles to my own needs when I assemble my team for my support team. It's like, I go to that dentist's office, they better be nice. It's like, I'm paying for that. Same thing when I go see my primary care physician, or I take my pickup truck into the dealership. I expect customer service. I have high standards, and if I don't get it, I'll go somewhere else. So yeah, it's great to be the captain of your own ship. You're in charge of your own fate, your own destiny. The direction you want to go in. Um, just be mindful that even though you are the customer, and the customer is always right, still mind your manners. I think you'll get along just fine. There are customers that I deliver freight to that are complete jerks. And it's just like, I don't know what their problem is, but you know, I'm not changing how I do anything. It's like I didn't do anything wrong, but there are bad customers. But the customers are always right. And why is the customer always right? Well, it's the old saying that whoever has the gold makes the rules. Um, if you are the customer, you have the gold, and they want to get paid. So, and they want your repeat business. So with that is a certain expectation that you're going to have a level of service, a level of uh, support from them that you're willing to pay for. And if they don't provide it, you're not going to pay for it. You're at least not going to come back to them for repeat business. You'll go somewhere else. So that's the whole idea. And then you have your services that you've assembled, and then you have your network of other owner operators or small business owners that you rely on, for consulting and advice and things like that. So you just give it some thought. It's like, okay, what do I need to assemble my team? Maybe it's your bank, maybe it's the credit union, something like that. And you just go on down the list and decide how happy are you with those people. Do they support your goals, or is it always something that you have to struggle to get something from them? And it's like, well, if it's a struggle, don't put up with it. Go find someone else. All right, guys, so I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.